We belong to a family. Family is the word we use to talk about a group of people who follow Jesus. We are part of His family. Now that word brings up a lot of different feelings for people. And the truth is, we all have a desire to belong to something. And whether we call that a family, or as author Seth Godin calls it, a tribe, or we can call it a crew, a gang, or maybe just the homies, whatever you call it, we all have a desire to be a part of a group of people, large and small, who have a connection to each other. Whether that connection is shoes or food or video games or maybe sports or movies, whatever your hobbies are, the things you love, we desire to connect with people around those things. Now, if that connection is Jesus, we typically call that family. And Ephesians 2:19, it says, "You are members of God's family." Family can be hard to deal with, hard to talk about, hard to think about. See, we all have different experiences with our families, and some are really good and some are just bad. So that makes it hard to think about being part of God's family. See, we all come with our thoughts on what family is. But today I want to look at what we should and what we can do as a family. But first, I want you to take a minute, pause this video, and I want you to talk around your groups about a good experience you've had with your family or your group of friends. So now, take a minute, pause the video, and come back. Now, I've got a bunch of great memories of family as I grew up. When I was young, everything was closed on Christmas and on Sundays, and I remember when stores began to open, which is why I still say, wait, is that open? It's Sunday. And Amanda often looks at me like, really? With everything closed, that meant there was nothing open to distract us. We had nowhere else to be on those days. So on holidays, we would be together as a big family. All the craziness of my uncles and aunts and later on cousins. But there's one scene that always stands out in my mind when I think about holidays and my family. I was sitting on the couch. I'd already got all my food together. It was Christmas. And I'm sitting there and I was like, oh man, I forgot the dinner bun. And I was maybe like 7 or 8 at the time. And so I hollered across the room to my Uncle D, yo, pass me a dinner bun. And without a second thought, he wound up and threw that thing clear across the house. Of course, I caught it. I just remember sitting there laughing because I'm like, my uncle just threw food across the house. I'm sure my mom is not happy. Anyways, that's a memory, a great memory I have. Holidays with family. But now, what are we called to do as God's family? Hebrews 10:23 and 25, it says this, "Let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm, for God can be trusted to keep His promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And let us not neglect meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of His return is drawing near." Now there's a lot of instruction there, but last week we briefly talked about it. But as a family, as a FAC student family, this is what we should be doing. Motivate each other to act like Jesus would in our day-to-day life. Motivate each other to do good works with Jesus. And meet together regularly so we can encourage and be encouraged by what God is doing in us and through us. So you talked last week about what we can do to love each other and create a place of belonging here. And maybe you had more ideas this past week of what we can do. I want you to share those in your group a little later. But if we're honest with ourselves, we don't always get it right. We make mistakes and we make people feel unwelcome. I don't think, or at least I hope, none of us do that on purpose or intentionally. So what do we do when we get it wrong? What do we do when we make a mess? I started watching this series on Netflix called The Playbook, A Coach's Rules for Life. And in the first episode, NBA coach Doc Rivers shared his rules. One of his rules really hit me as a rule we could use here at FAC students and really in our lives. And the rule is champions keep moving forward. The example he gave was Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest boxers ever. He was the champ, and people thought the champ never got hit. But the truth is, he got hit, and he got hit a lot. But what separated him was that he kept moving forward. He did not let getting hit set him back. He didn't give up. Now, what if we adopted that same rule at FAC Students? That we would act like champions and keep moving forward. When we make a mistake, we don't sit and dwell on it. We don't carry the weight. We seek forgiveness. When we make a mistake and we hurt someone, we keep moving forward by going to that person. When we hurt someone, we need to go to them and make it right. When we make someone feel unwelcome, we try to make it right. What if we took the attitude of, we take responsibility for our actions? See, champions don't blame others. Champions do what it takes to get better and make it right. What if we adopted that as a rule at FAC Students? That we would act like champions and keep moving forward. When we make mistakes, we don't dwell on it, we move forward. When we hurt someone, we keep moving forward. But when we hurt someone, we move forward by making it right. That's a different thing. When we take responsibility for our actions, champions don't blame others. Champions do what it takes to get better and make it right. So when we mess up as a family, we don't come down on each other, we go to each other with grace and love. We forgive like God forgives. This is going to mean some hard conversations. Matthew 18 verses 15 to 17 gives us some instructions on this. It says this, if another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. If the other person listens and confesses, you have won the person back. But if you are unsuccessful, take one or two others with you and go back again, so that everything you say may be confirmed by the 2 or 3 witnesses. If the person still refuses to listen, take your case to the church. Then if he or she won't accept the church's decision, treat that person as a pagan or a corrupt tax collector. So let me put this in some easy steps for you. Go to the person in private and talk to them. If that doesn't work, bring someone along. A leader, a coach. You can take me. Now I hope we never get to this point, but if it's a serious enough offense, then we take it to a higher level. And if that still doesn't work, well, we ask them to leave, and that really is not what we want. Now I never want to have to do that in this family, but we must commit to each other, to not talk about each other, but to talk to each other, and to seek forgiveness, and to reconcile. If we realize that we've sinned against someone or hurt them, we need to go to them and seek forgiveness. James 5:16, it says this, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results. There's an old proverb that is said, open confession is good for the soul. It's so true. When we confess, when we openly confess this is what's going on, it's this freeing feeling that we receive. The weight is relieved. But I believe that we only get to the place where we can openly confess everything by all of us having the attitude that we find in Romans 12 verses 17 and 18. And that attitude, it says this, never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honorable. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Act honorably. Don't repay evil with evil. That's a good attitude to have. And along with that, simply being vulnerable and bold enough to step out and confess. That's hard. It's not easy to confess, but it's something we need to do. But ultimately, for us to have a healthy family here at FAC Students, it starts with us. It starts in our hearts. Proverbs 16:7 says, when people's lives please the Lord, even their enemies are at peace with them. Now it's time to have some conversation in your small group. We'll see you next week. Love you guys.